it caused the most horrendous shockwaves to a community.
You could sense that a village like this wasn't used to crime of that degree.
There was no possibility that he could be tried again for that offence.
I think it gave him this powerful energy that he used to terrorise people. His behaviour was vile.
This was a historic ruling in terms of double jeopardy.
It was legally groundbreaking.
It was high stakes. This was the first in the country.
He clearly thought he'd effectively got away with it.
Ascot under Witchwood, a pretty picture postcard village that's home to just 500 residents. This peaceful, rural parish lies in the Evenlode Valley in Oxfordshire.
Ascot under Witchwood is a small village. Lots of villagers will have been here for many, many years. There will be families that have had descendants that have grown up in the village, and people know each other, that people look out for one another. It really is a tight-knit community where people generally know what's going on.
You know, if you drove through a village, you'd say, oh, this is a really nice place to live, you know, very idyllic, nice people, and a place where you perhaps also feel quite safe.
In this idyllic Oxfordshire village lives mum of two, Vicky Thompson.
Vicky was an absolutely delightful mum, wife, and, you know, loved her family, great family unit. People that came into contact with her, you know, equally found her delightful. You know, she was a lovely, kind lady.
Vicky was a key part of the village community, as many people were. People would have known her in the village, and clearly living a nice, quiet life in the Oxfordshire countryside.
She's often seen out walking her beloved dog, Daisy.
She loved the fact that she could just, you know, come out of her front door and within moments she'd be surrounded by fields, you know, with a dog and the children. So, you know, for her, I think it was a perfect place for her to bring up her family.
But Vicky's perfect idyll is about to change. Vicky had just celebrated her 9th wedding anniversary with her husband in the village pub where she worked. So on the Saturday, they take it easy, relaxing in the garden.
It was a pleasant day, the weather was beautiful, so it was a typical, you know, idyllic weekend really, that, you know, that's what families sort of strive for.
In the afternoon, Vicky decides to take collie Daisy out for a walk.
It would have been about 3:45, 4 o'clock when she set off at a regular time down the same country lane, across a little bridge over the river that ran through the village, to walk Daisy down to Shipton Lane, it was called, and to come back.
It's typical of a village lane in this sort of area, perfect for walking the dog, and I'd imagine it was a well-worn route for Vicky and many other dog walkers in the area.
But today, Vicky's dog Daisy does something quite unexpected.
The first that anyone was aware that something was wrong was when Daisy came back.
And then, unfortunately, when the dog returned without her, that's when alarm bells started to ring.
As time goes by, with no news from Vicky, concern starts to set in.
Vicky's husband went out, started looking, spoke to neighbours, spoke to friends, and then, you know, you almost naturally go into a sort of second phase of now starting to do a bit of a search, which is exactly what happened. So it sort of morphed into more of a search and thinking something's not quite right.
Vicky's husband assembles a small search team of family, friends and neighbours. They retrace her steps on her regular walk down Shipton Lane in the desperate hope of finding her.
One of those who were looking for her did notice some bloodstains on the surface of the path, but They thought that they were the blood of a sheep or something of that kind. They didn't think much of it at that time, so they went back to the village, and it was only when she still didn't return and they went back again that they looked at the bloodstain more carefully and came to realise that it was quite fresh, that beneath the congealed surface it seemed still to be wet. But much more importantly, nearby they then found some broken pieces of jewellery which were very quickly identified as hers. And that then became a source of real alarm, and I think it was that discovery which prompted the first call to the police.
Finding that jewellery, all that did was, I think, heighten the sense of nervousness within those that were looking for Vicky at the time.
As police make their way to the scene, the frantic hunt continues for Vicky. Her husband and neighbours are terrified she's clearly come to some harm. They make their way further down the lane.
This is Shipton Lane. We've got the lane itself, and then to the right you can see the train track, and they must have really panicked and must have been desperate in trying to find her, and it wouldn't have taken them too long once they'd realised that she was no longer on the path to scour the local area.
3 hours after Vicky went missing, they spot something sinister.
They noticed a gap in the hedge that ran alongside the lane where the bloodstaining and the jewellery had been found. And when they went over to the gap, which led into a nearby agricultural field that was bordered by the embankment of the railway line, they could see something in the distance that looked out of place, and they made their way across the field.
And they would have found her in a bad way here.
To their horror, Vicky's lying on the ground, with blood covering her face and head. When her husband tries to speak to her, she's drifting in and out of consciousness.
She was clearly in a very bad way. He spoke of her mumbling, and he tried to keep her talking and tried to keep her coherent. I believe she could name the name of their son.
Something ominous close by suggests this is foul play.
There was a stone there nearby. She'd obviously been attacked. She was bleeding, and to discover her like that is quite a harrowing experience, really. But Vicky was found, and she was found alive.
Her husband asked her, "Who did this to you?" But he just couldn't quite make out what she was saying. She was clearly in a very bad way and clearly very seriously injured.
She was certainly not able to say what had happened, still less to identify who was responsible.
With Vicky's life hanging in the balance, an air ambulance is sent in response to airlift her from the scene.
Time was of the essence to call in an air ambulance. That must have meant that she was clearly very gravely injured. And so she was airlifted to hospital.
She's flown straight to Oxford's John Radcliffe Hospital, which specialises in treating brain injuries.
She'd suffered multiple blows with a hard object to her head, which had caused skull fractures and serious brain damage.
As police secure the crime scene, their minds turn to the violent attacker on the loose.
Had Vicky been in a position to talk, there is no doubt that she'd have said exactly who'd attacked her, because of course everyone knew everybody. Sadly, she wasn't able to do that.
With no immediate suspect in the frame, the fear of an attacker living in their tight-knit community is the talk of the village.
People think that it could have been them, that it seemingly there's no targeting, that perhaps this was just a random attack on any dog walker. It could have been them. And I think that probably did strike home to the local community and perhaps the wider community in the county and beyond.
Within the community, there's no doubt that it was colossal. You know, that fear of crime can be just as powerful. And when you've got a small community that has been completely rocked by what unfolded, there's no doubt that it impacted that community severely.
Over the next 6 days in intensive care, Vicky Thompson fights for her life.
Her condition quite quickly deteriorated, and she died a few days later. And the cause of her death was blunt force head injury.
It's the news no one in the quiet village of Ascot under Witchwood wants to hear. Vicky's violent assault has now become murder.
As a reporter, I've covered many incidences of dog walkers being attacked, and they strike a chord with people. But when it develops into a murder, then I think it really does chill people locally.
In the quiet Oxfordshire village of Ascot under Witchwood, mum of two, Vicky Thompson, has been brutally attacked whilst out walking the dog, and dies 6 days later from her injuries. With Vicky's violent killer still at large, her community and the wider public are in shock.
The profile of the case, of course, was substantially enhanced by where it took place, because this was a late summer's afternoon, a woman in a little English village walking her dog. These were circumstances which, upon reading them, people would think were nightmarish. This was not something that was supposed to happen. And I think for that combination of reasons, it very quickly attracted a great deal of publicity.
So the pressure's on for Thames Valley Police to track down Vicky's brutal attacker.
This is the area where the incident occurred, and it is typical of an Oxfordshire village. We're on the edge of the Cotswolds, and it is a lane. You can clearly see why it was popular with dog walkers. It's the kind of lane that's quite overgrown. It's the kind of area that someone who didn't want to be seen could perhaps sort of conceal themselves and look as people walked along. We've got the railway line to my right here, the embankment, which is where Vicky was found.
Since the assault, police have been sweeping the area, looking for clues that could lead to the killer.
Looking at the lane, looking at the jewellery that was found, it was a view that perhaps where she was found wasn't necessarily where she was ultimately attacked at the time.
Scenes of crime officers retrace the killer's steps, back to the bloodstains on the path where they believe the attack happened.
As with all crime scenes, you know, that becomes the most fundamental starting point of your investigation. Because what's left behind is what you need to try and secure.
At the attack scene, clumps of blood-stained hair are found on nearby rocks.
Vicky was clearly struck about the head with a blunt instrument, potentially a rock or a stone, and clearly suffered very serious head injuries. It then appears that she was moved somehow, perhaps dragged over towards a railway line.
Although the attack happened in broad daylight, investigators have got their work cut out finding any witnesses.
This is the Cotswold line. It is a pretty quiet line. There isn't a main line. There won't be too many trains coming past at any time of day. And so no one would have really witnessed it. There wouldn't be too much passing traffic.
Police are also trying to work out why Vicky was dumped by the railway line.
Potentially moving Vicky's body or moving her unconscious body towards the embankment might have concealed what had happened, that potentially it might have been made to look like an accident, but there was no real motive put forward for why she was moved closer towards this railway embankment.
But 200 metres from the scene of the attack, officers make an intriguing find.
In a hedge was found a plastic bag which contained 2 items of ladies' underwear that were discovered to have been contaminated with semen. This was obviously a hugely significant find, both because of what it was and because of where it took place.
Although the underwear does not belong to Vicky, it's sent off to the lab for DNA analysis. Meanwhile, police continue the hunt for potential witnesses to the attack. 2,500 people would eventually be interviewed in the surrounding area.
A huge amount of work was done. House to house was done, lots of statements taken. Because unless you start to build up a picture, you can only do that by engaging with the community. And so it was a significant, large investigation, treated as a serious investigation right from the very outset.
But in the village, one name starts coming up on the doorstep. 20-year-old odd job man, Mark Weston.
And there's those that, are mischievous and those that are perhaps, trouble. Mark Weston was trouble, not mischievous, he was trouble. And the investigation identified Mark Weston as a key suspect, and they had every reason to do so.
And police are told Weston is often seen on the path leading towards the crime scene, Shipton Lane.
He used to go down there. This is a chap, we've got to bear in mind, he didn't have a day job. He hanged around. So this place was a sort of regular haunt. There was lots of witnesses that would place him on this lane because it was a regular thing for him to do.
Through door-to-door inquiries, 4 separate villagers tell police they saw Weston heading towards Shipton Lane just before the approximate time of Vicky's attack. The local post office clerk claims she saw him looking alarmed, covered in sweat, and running away from the village only an hour later.
Some witnesses had come forward and said that they'd seen him acting strangely. It became very clear as a result of, the inquiries that went on, that Weston became a suspect.
So police pay a visit to Mark Weston. On the morning of the murder, he claims he went fishing and shopping, but was at home all afternoon during the time of the attack. 3 days later, when police question him again, his story changes, and he says he was at home all day. 5 days later, it's a different story. Weston claims he actually left his house at 5 p.m, not long after the attack, to call on his neighbours who weren't in. But Weston's neighbours beg to differ. They say they had been at home at the time Weston said he'd visited and had never seen him. For police, something doesn't stack up.
There are conflicting reports about where he was. All this sort of stuff was coming in that conflicted with what Mark was saying. It would be right to look at him very carefully. But looking very carefully is one thing. Having the evidence to support an arrest is another.
But when scenes of crime officers search his garden 4 weeks after the murder, they find the charred remains of a sweatshirt or jacket that he's attempted to burn.
As the investigation went on, other evidence started becoming apparent about, burning of clothes. And so there's a few things that led the investigation to Mark Weston.
Today, police have arrested a 20-year-old man in the investigation into the murder of Vicky Thompson.
As the evidence builds, Mark Weston is arrested and taken in for questioning. He maintains his story, that he was at home at the time of Vicky's attack. Meanwhile, police search his house, seizing some of his clothing, including a pair of his boots. They are sent off for forensic analysis. The results come back to the senior investigating officer.
The SIO at the time asked the question, was there blood on this boot? The answer came back, no. You can't do any more with that. The question's been asked, and the answer was given.
Weston is released, and the police continue their inquiries. But soon, the lab has more news, and this time it could turn the case on its head. The lady's underwear found near the crime scene has a DNA result for the body fluids found on them. It matches Mark Weston.
That became a key piece of evidence. It linked Mark Weston to the scene, no question at all.
In Ascot under Witchwood, Oxfordshire, police have a prime suspect for the murder of mother of two, Vicky Thompson. DNA linked to Mark Weston is found in a bag of ladies' underwear close to the attack scene. With this new key evidence, police now believe they've established a motive.
He quite possibly was seen by Vicky performing a sex act and perhaps reacted angrily to Vicky, perhaps accosting him and asking him what's going on, and then things escalated from there.
I mean, would he really want the village to be aware that he was behaving like that, which was perverse activity?
I think he was threatened with humiliation and possibly worse. And I think the initial violence that he used was in temper and spontaneous. Once things start to go wrong, they get worse. And I'm afraid I think that's what happened here.
As Weston is put under the spotlight, more evidence is uncovered, linking to the bag of underwear found near the attack scene.
During a search of a narrow watercourse that ran down the back of the gardens of the houses in the street where he lived was another plastic bag in which were found other items of ladies' underwear which had been placed there or an attempt had been made to conceal them after the day of the attack. He did not want items of ladies' underwear to be found in his home which would connect him to the scene, and so he had separately disposed of those so as to prevent that connection from being made.
Although none of this underwear belonged to murder victim Vicky, police can now see Weston's trying to hide a sordid secret.
It was the underwear of women who lived in the village, and it had been taken from their washing lines, and he was using it for a sexual purpose. His reputation in the village from that day onwards would have been destroyed. I think there would have been an element of ridicule in it for him, and it might well be that he just couldn't bear the thought of that.
It seemed from the evidence that Mark Weston perhaps had a troubling relationship with women and perhaps fixated on some women locally. We will never know.
Today, a 20-year-old man has been charged with the murder of Vicky Thompson.
6 months after Vicky Thompson's brutal killing, Mark Weston is charged with her murder. Then, in November that same year, he finally faces trial at Oxford Crown Court. But before the case barely gets underway, the prosecution's dealt a serious blow.
I think the police and perhaps the Thompson family felt very aggrieved that the judge presiding over the trial ruled inadmissible some key evidence, and that was that bag found with 2 pieces of underwear containing DNA from Weston very near the scene. That was ruled inadmissible. The jury couldn't know about that.
With little other evidence proving Weston's inappropriate sexual behaviour, the judge believes this one piece of proof could unfairly sway the case.
The judge felt it just wasn't fair for Weston that he would get a fair trial if that was admitted. And I've got no doubt having that judge make that direction would have been hard to be accepted. But the law is there to protect everybody, whether you're a victim or an offender, to make sure, from an offender's perspective, that you get a fair trial.
But police have now lost their vital evidence linking Weston to the crime scene.
And so a key bit of evidence, a key bit of fact-finding from the police was ruled out at a stroke.
It is unfortunate that that wasn't admitted as evidence. It would have been crucial. It would have significantly helped the Crown's case.
As the trial continues, the prosecution case never recovers.
There have always been discrepancies and inconsistencies in the accounts which he gave at the time about his movements, but none of that was sufficient to prove an opportunity for him to have been where she was in order for him to have carried out the attack. And in the absence of a piece of evidence which could clearly establish that, it was always going to be difficult.
Following a trial lasting 14 days, the jury retires to consider the case. To the court's surprise, they return in just 50 minutes. The verdict? Mark Weston is not guilty. It's a body blow for the police and Vicky's family.
An acquittal in 50 minutes or so is fairly rare in my experience, and so clearly the jury in that original trial just didn't feel there was the evidence there to convict Mark Weston.
An acquittal so quickly after retirement was interpreted as a declaration of innocence, a statement by the jury, not merely that it hadn't been proved that it was him, but that it very definitely wasn't him.
It is very disappointing when a jury does come back and return a verdict of not guilty, when you know and you strongly believe that that person is guilty.
The case was thrown out very quickly, and so the police and Thompson's family and friends clearly walked away from the Crown Court that day very disappointed indeed.
They made their decision at the time that had to be accepted.
Mark Weston even appears on local news to boast about his acquittal.
Cleared of murder, Mark Weston is this morning back with his family.
Well, I've done nothing wrong, but they still kept saying it was me, though it wasn't. But now they've come to realise they had the wrong person.
And to add salt to their wounds, Thames Valley Police comes under fire from the unlikeliest of places.
Following the acquittal, one of the jurors felt sufficiently strong about what they had observed during those proceedings to write directly to Mr. Weston, suggesting that he might sue the Thames Valley Police for a wrongful prosecution.
Although Weston secures legal aid to do this, his case runs out of steam. So he turns to other ideas of how to seek revenge.
There's a thought that you might quietly just go back and just be perhaps under the radar. Weston was none of that. When he got acquitted, I think he had a sense of empowerment.
He acted with impunity after that. He moved back into the community and he taunted the community perhaps in some ways and literally harassed people who'd been involved in that original trial. He didn't try to fade away.
Barely a year later, Weston launches a campaign of harassment against the village bobby who helped investigate the case. Day and night, he makes up to 50 silent phone calls to the PC, his wife and their 2 daughters.
He terrorised the officer. And bearing in mind, that's how we policed. You know, we're in that community. We're part of the community because you are a member of the village. And I've been there and it's lovely. But the thought of them being terrorised is just harrowing.
After police put video surveillance on the village phone box and record Weston's phone calls, he's convicted for harassment. Weston is sentenced to a 2-year conditional discharge and a restraining order. So next, Weston moves on to another villager who also provided evidence in his murder case.
I believe he put some posters up around the village and he made remarks about people being a grass, and clearly he went on the offensive.
Weston shines lights into his neighbour's house and posts threatening notes through her door. Mark Weston is convicted of harassment once again. He's sentenced to 100 hours of community service.
This empowerment, I think, overwhelmed him. So he became very vexatious. I am permitted to do this because actually I've been acquitted. I think it gave him this powerful energy that he used to terrorise people. His behaviour was vile.
He was perhaps a little bit arrogant. He didn't feel that he was under any threat from being hauled back to court. The law at the time meant that he couldn't be retried for the same offence, and so he clearly thought he'd effectively got away with it.
But a change of law on the horizon would soon give the investigators new hope.
Why? Because we knew, without question, that Mark Weston killed Vicky.
Ascot under Witchwood, Oxfordshire. In spite of proof linking Mark Weston to the murder of villager Vicky Thompson, he's acquitted in court. And the so-called double jeopardy law means Weston will never face justice again, even if new evidence comes to light.
It was a horrific attack, and her family must have been deeply troubled by no one having been convicted of her murder.
But in 2003, there's fresh hope.
Parliament passed an act which abolished the common law rule of double jeopardy, permitting, in limited circumstances, the prosecution for a second time of the same individual for the same offence.
2 years later, on the 10th anniversary of Vicky's tragic murder, Thames Valley Police's cold case review team reopens the investigation, with then Detective Superintendent Barry Halliday leading the unit.
That was typically one of the cases that was immediately identified as needing to be reviewed.
That didn't mean it was easy for prosecutors to bring another case. It was, in fact, there was a very high bar for the prosecution to succeed. They'd also need compelling, fresh, new evidence. They knew that a murderer had walked free after that initial trial, and they just needed that one piece of evidence to get him, to nail him, to get their man.
The light bulb moment for investigators comes from another high-profile case that hit the headlines 5 years earlier. The murder of Peckham schoolboy, Damilola Taylor.
The senior police officer was attending a lecture, and how, upon the first investigation of the death of that little boy, highly incriminating bloodstains had not been detected upon items of clothing being examined by scientists during the investigation, and how difficult it is sometimes to find them.
So detectives try and hunt down any of Weston's belongings that weren't returned to him following the first investigation. They're in luck. Weston's boots are found in one of the Force's exhibit stores. Could they contain that golden nugget of proof police desperately need?
There was no harm in sending those boots back in. Fresh pair of eyes, fresh forensic opportunities, and testing and examination, and just be sure that there was no forensics on those boots.
In the 10 years since the boots last saw the light of day, forensic techniques have massively evolved.
The changes in procedures for searching for blood would involve a change in the sorts of lights that we regularly use. We now use a fibre optic lamp, and that has a halogen bulb in it. Previously, people just used perhaps an overbench light with a tungsten bulb in it. And we know that that change in lighting is much better for looking for bloodstains. The other change is that we will more regularly use a low-power microscope to search an item for blood, whereas previously that wasn't routinely used.
So scientists put Mark Weston's boots under the microscope to see if the tiniest spot of blood had been missed the first time round. The fact that they are black proves to be the greatest challenge.
People think of bloodstains as being bright red. Well, they are when they're fresh, but they very quickly change their appearance. They darken.
The blood doesn't show up readily on a black surface. There are also lots of nooks and crannies, and it has a very intricate surface, so it's a difficult item to examine, and I think even a careful and diligent scientist could miss blood if they weren't examining it under optimum conditions.
But soon, forensic scientists hit the jackpot.
We found some blood staining on Mark Weston's boots, and DNA profiles were obtained from that blood, and those matched Vicky Thompson. That was really the significant moment in this case. It was the turning point.
It's the news the cold case team have been longing for.
The case was never closed, and to get a moment like that where you're told that all that hard work that your team has ploughed into and actually you get fundamental evidence is euphoric.
They'd finally found that smoking gun, that real piece of evidence that they needed to seal the conviction that they thought they should have sealed years earlier.
After 4 years spent rebuilding their case, police swoop in to rearrest Mark Weston.
He was absolutely, frankly furious. He was adamant, arrogant, can't believe this is happening to me again. That sort of behaviour. So all the evidence was presented to him, including the overwhelming evidence of the blood of Vicky on his own boots. Absolutely no response from him at all, accepting any responsibility or liability for Vicky's death. A complete and utter denial.
But the police aren't home and dry with a prosecution yet. Next, they have to convince a court of appeal. And these are uncharted waters. It's one of the first times a double jeopardy case has been heard before the court.
Our case was made very strongly, and then there is that huge sense of nervousness whilst you're waiting for the decision.
After weeks of waiting, police and prosecutors finally get news.
Given how compelling the evidence was, the Court of Appeal made the decision that it was in the interests of justice for Mr. Weston to be tried again, and his acquittal was quashed.
That was agonising, waiting. But the news came back. You are elated.
It was a great moment when we heard that the Court of Appeal had overturned the acquittal. This was a historic ruling in terms of double jeopardy and introducing new scientific evidence.
5 months later, Weston finally hears the murder case against him for a second time.
There was a real sense that Thames Valley Police had been given a second chance here. And so there was a sense of tension that the police were gambling in a sense, that this was their final throw of the dice.
It was high stakes. The tension was immense. And Weston continued to be as arrogant as ever.
But this time, the discovery of underwear near the crime scene linked to Weston is allowed to be heard in court. It's clear even he can't explain away the overwhelming evidence against him.
There wasn't going to be much anybody could do about the fact that her blood was found on his boots. The scientific evidence this time round was simply unanswerable.
Perhaps he knew that his time was finally up, and that last piece of evidence was crucial, and he couldn't fight this any longer.
But Weston's fate is once again in the hands of the jury as they retire to consider their verdict.
The trial was absolutely extremely intense. That wait was probably the most sensitive, nervous time I've ever experienced.
The jury delivers their verdict. Mark Weston is finally found guilty of Vicky Thompson's murder. 15 years after her death, the judge jails him for a minimum of 13 years.
This arrogant man, this man who'd sort of taunted those who tried to bring him to justice, was finally behind bars.
It's a relief to the husband who comforted his dying wife after Weston's vicious attack.
It doesn't bring back his wife, and nothing can, of course, but it was the verdict they wanted.
It was big, it was significant. But let's not lose sight of the real fact here. The real fact here is Vicky lost her life. She shouldn't have done. It broke a family. It caused the most horrendous shockwaves to a community. And this individual evaded capture for all those years.
And the case will forever be etched in the memory of the quiet Oxfordshire village of Ascot under Witchwood.
It was clearly a case that had a big impact locally and perhaps continues to do. People haven't forgotten what's happened, and so that case does still live long in the memory locally.
And what of Mark Weston himself?
There's no remorse, there's no acceptance. This was a miscarriage of justice. Well, that was rich. A miscarriage of justice occurred years ago. Weston committed that murder, and Vicky's life was taken away by that monster, nobody else.
A cold dread.
So here we are coming to the stage where the serial killer effect kicked in.
Early in the morning of the 28th of August 1981, a commuter discovered the mutilated body of a young girl dumped by the Thames in Windsor. Unable to pinpoint exactly where she'd been killed meant that finding the killer was like looking for a needle in a haystack. All the police knew for certain was that they were looking for a violent and sadistic individual who took pleasure in inflicting pain, and that he was likely to do it again. Built on the banks of the River Thames in Berkshire is the town of Windsor. It's home to Windsor Castle, which has been an official residence of the British royal family for almost 1,000 years.
Windsor is a very, very busy town, very busy tourist town. However, the village of Windsor, the residence area of Windsor, is very local, just like any other village, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows everybody else's business.
On a bright, sunny Friday morning in August 1981, Kenneth Linney of Thames Valley Police received a phone call, starting a case that would become a 30-year personal crusade.
I was at home and I received a call about 6:30 in the morning to say that a body had been found on the banks of the Thames in Windsor. I immediately attended.
When Detective Superintendent Linney reached the scene at 6:45, he was met by a horrific sight.
I arrived at Barry Avenue, where the body was in a face-down position, naked, that of a teenage girl, and it transpired that it was found by a man on his way to work. He immediately notified the police. I then made various phone calls and got other officers out to form an inquiry team and the uniformed officers to seal the area off. And from there it went on into a general investigation.
There's no attempt to conceal the body, in fact, far from it. And one can only speculate as to the significance of this, but it could be that leaving the body in that condition to full public view might have been an additional twist to the humiliation of the victim.
Houseboats moored just meters from the body were immediately investigated.
All those boats were stopped from moving, and the officers then started interviewing the occupants to see if they'd heard anything during the night.
By 7 a.m. they had ascertained that no one had heard anything, and Detective Superintendent Linney continued organising the investigation.
I notified then the Home Office pathologist. I then formulated a small incident room at Windsor Police Station until we had identified the body. It was very important to find out who this girl was. No girl had been reported missing in the Windsor area.
Almost 13 miles away near Hanwell in West London, mother of 3 Carol Walterson made a worrying discovery about her 17-year-old daughter Claire.
Went to wake her up and she wasn't in her bed, and it just wasn't right, so it fills you with a cold dread.
A worried Carol went to work, whilst in Windsor the police investigation continued.
It looked as if the body had been dropped from the sky due to the fact there was no blood or anything outside the basic body area. And bear in mind that there were severe wounds to the body. This was a problem for us, but we could find no forensic evidence as to where it was dropped from.
The forensic team then went about doing a procedure called taping.
Taping is done with sellotape to take any particles off the body. It's laid out then and sealed and used later on then for forensic report purposes.
In the early 80s, forensic scientists could only compare and match fibre samples. So until they found a comparison, the tapings were sent to storage. Then a preliminary investigation was carried out by the pathologist at the scene.
The wounds that were on the body could have been done in situ, where the body was found. The body was definitely unconscious, if not lifeless, when it was laid on the footpath.
The pathologist found that Claire's throat had been cut, and she'd been sadistically mutilated. It was too much, even for the most experienced of officers.
The injuries caused to the girl, horrific injuries that were caused to her, and how she must have suffered. And I think it affects you. I have 4 daughters, and I could see my teenage daughters in the same situation. So it does affect you.
It wasn't long before this horrendous and baffling murder made the national news.
I went to work and heard on the radio that they'd found somebody, her body, and I just knew it was her. I just knew it was her from where they found her in Windsor, which wasn't far from us. I don't know why, I just knew it was her, so I went into a complete panic. I phoned all the friends that I knew to see whether she was there. I phoned her work, and they were very cross that she just hadn't turned up. So I got home and went straight to the police station.
Once Claire had been reported missing, police quickly made the potential link.
The Metropolitan Police rang to say that a girl was missing from the Handball area. So we've notified them again. Officers came down and they identified the body.
Certain they had the right person, it was time for the police to tell the family and confirm Carol's worst fears.
Yes, it was her. After they looked at photos and things. And I can't even begin to describe what it was like after that.
Claire's older brother Nick arrived home, hoping his sister was still just missing.
After I heard it on the radio and everything else, and I made my way home, and as I was walking down the pavement, I could hear my mum screaming. Indoors, I could hear her screaming, and by then I just knew as well. And I think it was the police or someone that answered the door, and I think I just turned and said, "Is it?" or something, and they said, "Yeah."
Thames Valley police officers wasted no time looking into Claire's background.
I went up with another officer to Shipton Lane, to the family home, and there spoke to Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton. They, of course, were in a terrible state, and I then again got officers to sit with them and left them to mourn their fate. It was a terrible shock, because the girl was used to going out during the day, and she was a local girl, and was well liked by everybody in the district.
On a council estate, there wasn't too much to do, but you have lots of friends, so she was always with friends, and, well, we always had a house full of friends. I think that was more her enjoyment. And also when she got her job, that became the be-all and end-all of her life, because she loved it so much and obviously loved the people there as well.
The next morning, the sun may have risen as usual, but for Claire's mum, Carol, the world as she knew it had ended.
All I can really remember is the house being full of policemen. It was just basically showing photos, and so really then we were dealing with it the next day when we knew it really was her, and been dealing with it ever since.
Whilst the family began a lifetime of grieving, the police continued with their investigation, determined to find Claire's vicious killer.
It was decided that an incident room, a major incident room, should be set up in the Metropolitan Police District.
Pete Byrne was a young policeman at that time.
I was involved in the investigation, in that I was a young detective and was part of the 50-strong team of detectives that worked on the investigation.
The police's first job was to build up a picture of Claire and her final movements on that fateful Thursday night.
Claire was ironing, and we said, "Are you going out tonight?" And she said no.
Me and Claire was just sitting in the kitchen having a chat, which was unusual really. We was having a good old chat and everything, and she weren't going out that night. And then, you know, but the funny thing was, I remember, God, we must be growing up because of the way we was talking to each other. I don't know, she was staying in and that was it.
But when we got home, she had gone out. She was 17, it wasn't a problem. But she was always in by 10 o'clock or abouts. But I thought 17, okay, it's 11 o'clock, you know. It's always the first time. But then when she didn't come home, couldn't sleep at all, because it just wasn't like her. She'd never been away all night unless we'd known about it. But then I heard laughing outside and I thought, oh, she's home. So I went off to sleep.
It didn't take long for police to piece together Claire's last night.
On the Thursday evening, Claire had gone to see her boyfriend, who ran an amusement arcade on the Uxbridge Road at Ealing. She had left there around about 10 p.m. Normally, he would have given her a lift home, but they had a slight disagreement, and she refused a lift. So she walked along the Uxbridge Road in the direction of her home in Northolt. Her boyfriend did attempt to get her into the car, stopped, asked her to get into the car, but she refused. That sighting of Claire being spoken to by her boyfriend is the last known sighting of Claire alive.
The boyfriend was immediately treated as a suspect.
He said he went home then by 10:30 that night, but he was arrested on suspicion of murder.
Even though the police had been left with no clues, could they have already managed to find the murderer? In August 1981, 17-year-old Claire Walterton had been horrifically murdered and dumped in Windsor, and so far, no forensic evidence had been found. Police had quickly pieced together Claire's final movements, identifying the last person she was seen with, who was arrested for murder and questioned.
Inquiries in relation to his whereabouts later on that evening revealed that he had gone home and was seen by a neighbour walking a dog shortly afterwards, so therefore he was ruled out as being the potential attacker of Claire.
With their only suspect now eliminated, the police looked at using the power of publicity.
There was a lot of media activity, television and all, up at Hanwell. And of course the papers then had the large columns on it.
Information about Claire's last night was released by police to the press.
2 ladies came forward following publicity and said that they'd seen a girl dragged into a car at the junction of Uxbridge and Yedding Lane about roughly around the time that Claire was last seen. They couldn't give any descriptions. All they could say was a dark-coloured car.
Keen to get the most from their only lead, police weren't afraid to try experimental techniques.
I resorted to hypnotists actually interviewing some of these people, because we felt that if you can probably refresh someone's memory by that means, then of course we may come up with something that the person doesn't think of normally.
Hypnotism didn't seem to have the desired effect.
Whether that person that the lady saw was Claire is unknown. A large part of the initial investigation centred on trying to identify that vehicle, but it was never traced.
The ladies were so vague about this. They thought the girl was pulled into a car. There was no screams, nothing whatsoever, and it was some distance away they saw it. So there was no evidential value really in that particular incident.
Disappointed but undeterred, the investigation team continued with their inquiries.
The incident room then, once we established it at Norwood Green, became a very busy place, because we had to do a lot of house-to-house inquiries from Hanwell down the Uxbridge Road right up to the top of Yedding Lane, which would have covered the area where she would have walked. Then other inquiries had to be dealt with. You had inquiries, national inquiries, you had inquiries dealing with people with previous convictions for that type of offence or for sexual offences. So there was a lot of work to be done and a lot of foot slugging, to put it plainly.
For some on the team, this was all a new experience.
It was my first ever murder, and I was just learning how things are done on a major investigation in terms of the system. There was no computer as such, everything was paper-based, but everything had to be done in a clear and methodical way so that nothing was missed.
There was a huge amount of work to be done.
The police inquiries, the witnesses, the incident room sometimes picks out something which is unusual from statements or movements or a person, the background of a person, and they have to be followed up, and they're known as actions. Actions are then dealt with by detective officers who are out on the ground. It takes a long time. The average working hours during the day on an inquiry like that can be anything from 12 to 14 hours a day. takes a lot of work.
After months of fruitlessly investigating every possible avenue, police were getting desperate.
Clairvoyance came forward. So many people came forward because it was a nasty murder. And the press gave it a lot of publicity.
With nothing to lose, a clairvoyant was introduced to Carol and the family.
She got in touch with them and they were clutching at straws. And she stayed for a couple of hours. But she kept saying things that Claire would have said, but Claire would never have spoken the way she was speaking, and she kept making out she was talking to her, which I found so upsetting, because if Claire was going to talk to anybody, she would have talked to me. Sorry. So, yeah, I had to ask her if she would go in the end, because she'd really overstayed her welcome.
In the spring of 1982, over 6 months after Claire Walterton's mutilated body was discovered in Windsor, the police still didn't have a single lead.
We tried everything, and with the result, of course, we didn't get anywhere. We had all our exhibits. They were put in storage in 1982. And then, as I say, I thought at that stage that we'll never solve the case unless, because of the sadistic injuries that were caused, were we dealing with a serial killer.
It was a horrible thought. Claire's killer probably wouldn't be caught unless they killed again.
This was someone who was really, really sadistic. And that was the type of person we were looking for.
The mutilation, the clearly sexual nature of the crime, suggests that there's a distinct possibility that the individual would strike again.
The failure to track down Claire's murderer was a big blow for everyone concerned.
You have to remember what things were like back in 1981. DNA as an investigative tool didn't exist. There was no CCTV. Mobile phones were very, very rare, and automatic number plate recognition didn't exist. However, you can only do what you can do, and if all the normal lines of inquiry haven't produced anything, then unfortunately you have to be pragmatic, and the investigation is wound down.
Well, it's disappointing that you'd like to get a result. You think of the girl lying on the pavement in Windsor, and it affects you. I don't care how hard anybody is, but it affects you. And it affected other officers at the time.
The chilling thought that Claire's killer would strike again never left the officers involved in the case. And in December 1984, Detective Superintendent Linney received the news he'd been expecting for over 2 years.
I had a phone call from officers over at Denham to say that they had found a body on the golf course. They told me that the body that they had was of a girl, naked and with horrific injuries. Now, I thought, well, this is identical. The modus operandi kicked in. The modus operandi is the method used by criminals, the same method that is used. And that is the basis of serial killers. So here we are coming to the stage where the serial killer effect kicked in.
Now investigating 2 similar killings, Thames Valley Police were forced to wonder, had Claire's murderer struck again? Just over 3 years after the unsolved murder of Claire Walterton in Windsor, a mutilated body of a woman called Deirdre Sainsbury was found dumped at a golf course in Denham. It was a discovery that grabbed the police's attention. The body found on the golf course had chilling similarities to the murder of Claire Walterton.
As soon as I heard of this incident and the fact that it was identical more or less to the girl that was found in Windsor, Claire Walterton's name, of course, was there, printed all over it.
A murder investigation was immediately launched.
The police publicised the fact of the murder, and by chance, a man had seen Deirdre get into a vehicle on the South Circular Road in Richmond. That man had only recently read an article in the Reader's Digest which talked about the dangers of hitchhikers, and he had the presence of mind to recall the index number or registration number of the car that this hitchhiker had got into.
It was a huge piece of luck.
Police from the Denham inquiry, having received the registered owner of the vehicle, went to the house of Colin Campbell, who was the registered owner. They searched his property and found in the garage the clothing from the girl found on the golf course in Denham.
Police arrested and interviewed 37-year-old travelling salesman and keen amateur hockey player Colin Campbell.
He admitted picking Deirdre up, stated that he chatted to her en route. In doing so, he gave his name, or his first name, and he felt, as he was getting on so well with her, he would try it on. He did. According to him, she retaliated and hit him, and then he hit her. But he said he hit her so hard that she became unconscious. He stated he then panicked because he'd given his name to her, and in a panic, he then hit her about the head with a hockey stick, which is in the back of his car.
Campbell also admitted mutilating the body, allegedly to make it look like a maniac had done it. Convinced that there was a strong connection between Deirdre and Claire's killings, Detective Superintendent Linney went to see Campbell, hoping he might also confess to Claire's murder.
He was absolutely so suave, so complete, answered everything that I asked. Windsor? Oh yes, he'd been to Windsor. He'd been everywhere that I mentioned. But I had nothing whatsoever at that stage to connect him with Claire's murder. Nothing had been found at his property. And so I was left as I was in the beginning. And which is rather sad, actually, because I thought that he might just break, but no.
It was disappointing, but the investigation into the brutal murder of Deirdre Sainsbury moved quickly.
Having been interviewed, admitted being responsible for Deirdre's death, he was charged with the murder and stood trial at Reading Crown Court. His plea in court was not guilty to murder. He stated that whilst responsible for Deirdre's death, he killed her whilst suffering an epileptic episode.
The jury chose not to believe an epileptic episode could explain this brutal and sexually motivated killing. In July 1985, just 6 months after her death, Campbell was convicted of Deirdre Sainsbury's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. But Detective Superintendent Linney wasn't satisfied.
It was too much of a coincidence that we had the modus operandi of a man who was sadistic when he dealt with Deirdre Sainsbury. And the same man, in my opinion, committed the murder of Claire Wolterman. I had to sit back and just wait and wait, because I felt this. He might talk later on. This happens. They sometimes do, if there's something on their mind.
Unaware of Kenneth Linney's theory, as the years went by, Claire's family tried to cope with the huge void that had been left in their lives.
I think about it all the time. Always remember birthdays. Christmases is very difficult because she was Christmas. Holidays were difficult. In fact, you spend a lot of time thinking that you shouldn't be doing holidays, Christmas and things like that, because it didn't feel right without her being there.
For me, Claire was Claire. I can't explain to you how that is. Claire was just a happy-go-lucky Claire.
Most memories I have are quite normal memories because having a meal was just never having a meal. It was always laughing, having a meal at something that she'd either done or was doing while you were having the meal. So mostly when we sit down for dinner, I often remember some of the silly things she did. You know, she would either have peas up her nose or ice cream all over her face, or she would fill her mouth up with food and then laugh with her mouth open. It sounds awful, but when you're having a meal, it's actually quite funny.
Well, with my brother, it really affected him badly. He had a nervous breakdown and everything. So in the end, I didn't just lose a sister, I lost half of a brother as well, because it just wasn't the same ever since.
In 1996, 15 years after his conviction for murdering Deirdre Sainsbury, Colin Campbell appealed.
He stated that whilst he was guilty of causing her death, it wasn't murder.
At the appeal, he put forward the same defence as his original trial, but this time with the backing of an expert, who stated that due to being on the wrong medication, an epileptic episode could have been to blame. Campbell's conviction was quashed, and in 1999, a retrial ordered.
At that retrial, Campbell proffered a plea to manslaughter, which was accepted by the Crown, and he was therefore convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment again, but with a minimum tariff of 1 day.
The presiding judge, Mr. Justice Gage, said that whilst the court accepted that at the time of the killing Campbell's responsibility had been diminished, he still constituted a danger to the public, so couldn't be released without going through a parole hearing. It wasn't the result he'd hoped for.
And that subsequent hearings before the parole board, it was deemed that he was too dangerous to be released.
As the years went by, Campbell remained in prison, but the unsolved murder of Claire Walterton was never forgotten.
We didn't close the case completely, of course. You never do. We carried on taking inquiries and questions and answers from people. For the forces ringing up. This often happens. And you compare notes.
Police remained determined that they would bring Claire's murderer to justice. By 2011, the depraved murderer of Claire Walterton still hadn't been found, although police did have their suspicions about Colin Campbell, who was in prison for the strikingly similar 1984 killing of Deirdre Sainsbury. In 2007, Thames Valley Police had started looking at cold cases headed up by Pete Byrne. Claire's case was about to turn a corner.
In 2011, we had the capacity to commence a reinvestigation and a review into Claire's case. What we were looking to do was to use advancements in forensic science in the intervening 30 years to see if we could potentially identify the person responsible for her death.
What the review team found was to be key in moving the case forward.
One of the items that we submitted for additional forensic work was the tapings. These tapings had been originally taken to potentially obtain fibres. However, we knew from other cases that had been investigated by other forces within the UK that now we could get DNA that had been captured from those tapings.
The evidence was sent to LGC Forensics near Oxford for DNA analysis.
Tapes were examined microscopically and small sections were cut out and submitted for DNA profiling.
Pete Byrne contacted Kenneth Linney, who had retired, to tell him a cold case review was taking place.
Which I was delighted about, because I thought something might happen or come from that.
It didn't take long for the lab to come back with a result.
A mixed DNA profile was obtained which appeared to be from Claire Walterton and from an unknown male. We used that profile of the unknown male to search the National DNA database, and this identified a list of potential contributors. Colin Campbell was amongst those individuals.
It was a name that was well known to everyone involved in the original 1981 case.
The moment I saw his name, I knew that he was a convicted killer. So I was obviously really, really excited.
The match to Campbell was strong, but it wasn't strong enough to guarantee a conviction.
At that point, they were able to say it was a 1 in a million match probability. Whilst that's good, normally for DNA, it's a 1 in a billion match probability.
A 1 in a million match probability meant that there could be up to 60 other individuals in the country who the DNA could belong to. 1 in a billion would mean it almost certainly came from Campbell.
So we needed additional forensic work to take place, which involved using a professor of genetic statistics from UCL College in London. That was going to take time, and also we were doing additional tests on other tapings that had been recovered from Claire's body.
In 2011, having been in prison for 26 years, Campbell was coming to the end of his sentence for what was now the manslaughter of Deirdre Sainsbury.
Campbell was a Category D prisoner, which meant he was allowed access out into the open. And obviously it was a potential danger to members of the public, the fact that this man potentially now was a double killer. So we had to make contact with the prison service, get him recategorised so that he was sent back to a closed prison.
Finally, after months of waiting, there was news from UCL College in London.
We had work completed by this professor of genetics who was able to say that the match probability, in his opinion, was 1 in a billion of Colin Campbell being the donor of the DNA found on the tapings.
The news meant that Kenneth Linner's original hunch in 1984 about Campbell had been right.
When I found out that Colin Campbell had been identified through DNA as being identical to a person's hair, his hair which had been found on the tape taken at our mortuary, I was delighted.
On November the 27th, 2012, 31 years after Claire was killed, Colin Campbell was arrested. Police decided to question him.
Campbell showed no remorse whatsoever, and I got the impression that he felt that he was a victim, in as much that he had epilepsy, he'd been wrongly diagnosed, he'd been given the wrong medication years ago, and it's other people's fault.
My lifestyle meant that the way I was, I wasn't averse to being friendly with the lady.
Yeah.
I may well have known a series of ladies.
Okay.
Claire may have been one of them. No, I don't. She looks like any girl I may have played hockey with. She looks like any girl I may have met through work.
Okay.
Actually, she looks like a happy person, and I'm glad about that. No, I don't recognise her.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's not to say I never ever knew her. I just don't remember her.
To my mind, had you committed that horrendous act against Claire, you would have known what you'd done and you'd remember it. But he was almost blasé about the fact, well, I can't remember what I was doing. We consulted with the Crown Prosecution Service. They agreed that Campbell should be charged. He was charged.
Once Campbell was charged, it was time to inform Claire's family.
Somebody described it as like a fresh scab that had been picked off. It was like an old wound that had been reopened, and that described it quite well for me.
On the 15th of November 2013, Colin Frederick Campbell stood trial at Reading Crown Court for the 1981 murder of Claire Walterton. Claire's mum, Carol, was there from the start.
It was very, very, very hard and very emotional and very upsetting.
Colin Campbell entered a plea of not guilty.
Campbell couldn't run the defence that the epilepsy was the cause of his actions which resulted in Claire's death. That was because the experts had given evidence for him in relation to Deirdre's death weren't happy to say that epilepsy could be responsible for 2 homicides.
Claire's mum Carol had her own way of dealing with the grisly details of the case.
I didn't stay in for all the nasty bits at all. But what I was in there for was quite difficult.
Claire's family had tremendous courage. Claire's mum wanted to come to court. She wanted to make sure that the man responsible for her daughter's death was convicted. But at the same time, and rightly so, she didn't want to know the full details of what happened to her daughter.
The prosecution called on their trump card, the DNA.
The key item was the DNA evidence. That's what the case called in the first place. And when a DNA expert tells the jury this DNA is 1 billion times more likely to belong to Colin Campbell than anyone else, I think that was the key bit of information.
Faced with such compelling DNA evidence, Campbell put up his own defence.
He couldn't recall ever going into the amusement arcade where Claire had been that evening, but said he may have got in there. And had he gone in there, he may well have spoken to her, and he may well have touched her, and that's how his DNA got on her body. What was interesting was that the taping that from where the DNA was obtained was marked as being taken from Claire's buttocks. So therefore, the fact that he was potentially saying was innocent contact made that extremely unlikely.
The defence were, if I recall, trying to sort of blur the lines a little bit and make discredit the DNA. But I think when you say it's 1 billion times, that's pretty damning.
At the beginning of December 2013, the judge sent the jury out to deliberate.
The jury took quite a long time for it to come out, to make up their mind, which was just a nightmare again. You don't realise how much that is chewing you up inside and how much tense you are. And that.
After 3 excruciating days, the jury came back, and Campbell was convicted of murder. A few days later, the sentence followed. The judge, Mr. Justice Spencer, stated that only Campbell would know the true circumstances in which he came to pick up Claire Walterton that Thursday night in 1981, but that he was certain he did it with the intention of sexually assaulting, mutilating, and ultimately killing her.
Colin Campbell was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Claire Walterton. He must serve a minimum of 24 years. By that time, he'll be 90 years of age.
For Claire's family, it was a bittersweet moment.
I started to get fed up with people going, oh, now you'll have closure. Because you don't have closure. She's still gone. She still went through something that was horrible. I mean, I really do say I am really pleased that they got him, but having it all raked up again was really difficult.
What he got and everything else weren't even long enough, as far as I'm concerned.
He took a beautiful life away. A beautiful life. Somebody who was just coming into being a girl, a woman. And that's just not fair. It's not fair.
Kenneth Linney, who had been involved from the very beginning, was there to hear it all.
The judge, of course, made it quite clear to him when he sentenced him that he wasn't going to get away with the epilepsy excuse that he gave before. They couldn't produce any witnesses to say that it was epilepsy. And the judge made a comment that if the Court of Appeal had known his background, he mightn't have had his sentence quashed. And it was nice to know that he was convicted and rightly sentenced to a long term. But he will never be released from prison.
Although former Detective Superintendent Linney wasn't the only officer with a vested interest in the outcome.
Since 1981, Claire's case has been at the forefront of everyone's mind that worked on that case. When I got my current job, when I met old detectives that worked on Claire's case, they always asked me what's happening with Claire's case. They were all extremely pleased when we got the result and Campbell was convicted. So much so that they held a reunion 6 months after the trial, where they just wanted to meet up, talk about the case, and just say well done, because it was all part of their life.
After 32 years of trying to solve this brutal and bewildering case, Kenneth Linney could be satisfied they'd got the right man.
Many more people would he have killed had he got away with the Denham case. Because if you get someone who starts that activity of killing young girls and causing horrific injuries on them, when do they stop? That's the question. And I believe that we did stop the makings of a serial killer.
Campbell was in his late 60s at the time of his conviction for Claire's brutal murder, which means it was unlikely he'd ever be released. Finally, Claire and Deirdre's families could feel that justice had been done.
I think it was just a shock, because you don't expect that to sort of happen where you live.
Just unbelievable. It's like you're in a movie. It's not even happening to you.
Murder? What do you mean, murder?
When the police reviewed the CCTV footage, they saw a person entering the flats. It's chilling. She's on her way to kill.
Letchworth, England's first garden city, is a rural town situated north of Hertfordshire.
Letchworth was founded by Ebenezer Howard at the start of the 20th century. He wanted people to move out of cramped conditions in places like London and come and live in the countryside.
Letchworth, for somewhere to live, is lovely, it's welcoming, it's rural, but within easy reach of both Cambridge and London. I'm getting older, but I still find it's a very safe place to walk around. I just feel it's a very comfy place to live.
I think people in Letchworth are really friendly. Often if you walk in, they'll say hello.
Life in Letchworth is really good. Everybody's very friendly, can be very vibrant through the summer months. Very nice place.
Letchworth is a lovely place to live. Very quiet, very nice. No trouble at all. Wouldn't live anywhere else. Beautiful place.
And for 26-year-old carer Nikki Collingbourne, it was the perfect place to live and work while remaining nearby to her family.
We were like best friends, really. Not so much, we used to make a joke about her being my auntie because she was younger than me, but we were just like really close friends, like sisters, really, because we were of a similar age.
She always wanted children of her own, and I think that made her very childlike, but in a good way. And she worked with children as well, so.
Because she's so good with kids, like, amazing, like, just seeing family, anyone's children, even their friends' kids, she was brilliant with. So obviously, as I started having my children, she became quite involved, and we'd often spend weekends together away, with kids, without kids. She was just such a kind person.
Nikki was very funny, caring and loving. Everything about her. She was just a wonderful person. She'd drop anything to do anything for anybody.
Nikki's close family circle depended on her in their daily lives, and that included helping her mum and taking her to and from hospital appointments. But all that was about to change.
Nikki's mother was very ill. She was being treated in the Lister Hospital in Stevenage, which is about 7 miles away. Nikki's due to collect her, and when she doesn't appear, people are surprised.
Nikki usually does all the running around, goes and picks her mum up, makes sure she's got everything, and she had not answered her calls, which was obviously very unlike Nikki.
Nikki would never let anybody down on an appointment, never. unless it was absolute emergency.
By the afternoon, I was a bit really worried, so I just sent her a text and I just said, Nikki, if you need me, I'm here, blah, blah, and yeah. And then the next thing I know, her mum had rung me and said, have you seen Nikki? She hasn't turned up to pick me up from hospital. And I instantly knew. I knew something was not right. I went down, the car was there, so I knew she was in the flat, shouting through the letterbox, like Leanne stuff was shouting through the letterbox, no response. But I know that Nikki was very down and depressed about her mum being poorly, and she was really worried something was going to happen to her. And sometimes Nikki was the type of person that does need to be just left alone for a little while. It's very unusual for her not to contact people. So I thought, you know what, we'll give it a night.
But the next day, there is still no word from Nikki.
She's usually very reliable. Her family trust her, they rely on her. So they're concerned. Her half-sister obtains a spare key to her flat and goes round with other members of the family.
With Nikki not responding, her family let themselves into the flat. But nothing could prepare them for what they would find.
They walk into the kitchen and in front of them, they saw Nikki on the floor in a pool of blood. Her left wrist had been slit.
They found Nikki laying on the floor, her face up with, there was just like a massive congealed blood running from Nikki's head. And yeah, you could see that she was dead.
Family members went down to her flat to see if she was okay and obviously discovered her body. At that point, they immediately called the police.
My daughter phoned me up hysterical, saying, Nikki's dead, there's blood everywhere. And I just went hysterical on the phone and then I was in shock.
Police immediately arrive on the scene to be met by a gruesome sight.
In this case, the senior investigation officer will be looking to preserve that scene, preserving and securing evidence.
Nikki is laying on the floor of her kitchen, fragments of a ceramic chicken-shaped pot surrounding her. A severe cut is across her wrist. Could she have had an accident or taken her own life?
It was so bizarre and there didn't seem to be any particular reason for it.
It was suspected that Nikki had took her own life, but I knew that that wasn't the case. She'd never have done that. She loved life too much. She would never have left her mum and her family.
As Nikki's body is taken for a post-mortem, the tragic news travels fast through the close-knit community, alerting the local press to the scene.
When the police arrived, the area was cordoned off. There were police cars everywhere, officers in white suits from the forensic department carrying out checks. Local people at the shops and the flats were shocked by what had gone on.
It's not something you hear about in, the area that you live. It's not something you expect on your doorstep.
She was so friendly with everybody around here. It was sad when we heard about what happened to her. She wouldn't hurt anybody. She was the most kindest person I'd ever known. It was devastating news.
When the post-mortem report comes in, the results are not clear-cut.
From the pathology reports, there's no one single injury that led to Nikki's death. It was inconclusive.
But the results do reveal Nikki's skull had been fractured. And it seems the broken ceramic chicken-shaped dish which had surrounded her body was involved.
So the pathologist said that the chicken dish would have been picked up by two hands and used with considerable force. Although it wasn't enough to fracture Nikki's skull, it certainly was enough to render her unconscious.
The police quickly realised that somebody else had been involved.
The pathologists have concluded that she died because of the violent actions of a third party.
No one could have predicted that this was going to happen. We just couldn't believe it. It was just so, it was like it wasn't even happening to us.
With the outcome from the post-mortem now in, the inquiry into Nicky's death changes focus.
She's been murdered.
In Letchworth, results from the post-mortem on 26-year-old Nicky Collingbourne has changed the course of the investigation.
They walked into the kitchen and in front of them, they saw Nicky on the floor in a pool of blood. Her left wrist had been slit.
Chicken dish would have been picked up by two hands and used with considerable force. It certainly was enough to render her unconscious.
With a murder investigation now underway, police break the news to her grieving family.
I was at work. I got a phone call from my boyfriend at the time, and he just said, "You need to get home right now." He goes, "I can't really tell you anything. I don't want to tell you right now." But I knew. And I was so panicky. When I got there, there was police everywhere. It was, not very good. And my children were there crying. My mum was there crying.
And I was like, murder? What do you mean, murder? I honestly didn't think, even in that moment, that it was murder.
Just unbelievable. It's like you're in a movie. It's not even happening to you. Yeah, everyone was just shocked, devastated.
News that Nicky's death is now being treated as a murder quickly spreads around the area.
When I first heard about the murder, I think it was just generally shock, because you don't expect that to sort of happen where you live.
I was really amazed, really surprised, because it's a really safe area, and it really shocked me.
It took a long, long time to take it in. And we knew the relatives who knew them, and so sorry for the family, you know.
With family and locals still trying to come to terms with the murder, the bigger question being asked is who would want to harm Nicky?
She works with children. That was just what she wanted to do for her whole life. Just work with children, be a mum, and, she had a great relationship with everyone.
I loved everything about Nicky. Everything. She was just a beautiful person. There's nothing she wouldn't do for you. She'd cheer you up. She'd get you motivated, because I don't go out a lot. She'd come in, she'd do stuff for me. She's like the little sister I never had.
Her family was her life. And we saw her almost all the time. I'd open my door, my son would be gone into her house, and I wouldn't see him for days. Just to text her to make sure, is my son okay? And she's like, yeah, don't need to worry, he's here.
She literally brought so much joy to anybody that met her, really. She just kept us all together. She was the glue that kept both sides of the family together, really. She was just a really amazing, one of those people that you meet and you're like, wow, she was put on this earth just to care for people. She was just amazing.
I was honestly shocked when I found out who the victim was. So I honestly had no idea why anybody would want to harm her.
With no clues as to who would want to harm Nicky, forensic officers take a closer look at her flat, turning the block into a major crime scene.
Police officers in white suits were gathering vital forensic evidence. The whole scene had been cordoned off. It was a major crime in what was usually a quiet area.
A murderer will either leave something at the scene or take something away from the scene. So we're looking to preserve and secure that evidence. And that evidence will be DNA, fingerprints, blood, hair, fibres, etc. So that they're looking for the physical evidence. A forensic examination of the scene was carried out, and DNA, essentially blood, was found on the broken pieces of the chicken pot.
While the evidence is sent off to the laboratory for examination, further searching at Nicky's home uncovers something concerning.
A letter was found in Nicky's flat in which she'd written to her GP saying she was absolutely terrified.
The letter throws up more questions. Who could Nicky have been afraid of? And could this person be behind her untimely death?
Nicky unfortunately got a lot of threats, and Nicky was terrified. I've never ever known anyone so absolutely terrified. I remember one night she barricaded her door up.
Yeah, she was very withdrawn. She was just scared.
Police need to piece together Nicky's last known movements, including trying to ascertain whether anyone visited her.
There was no sign of a forced entry, in the sense of, for example, the door having been levered or a broken window or anything of that kind. The only way that you could get to it, it was quite secure, was by entering the door to the common parts of the purpose-built block and then going up the stairs and onto the landing and approaching the door of Nicky's flat.
So when looking at a murder investigation, the priorities at the scene could be different for different murders. For example, a killer has to got there and then gone away from the scene. So it could be fast track looking at the CCTV, it could be speaking to family members, or it could be house to house because somebody could have seen the killer leaving the scene.
All the entrance and the landing on the first floor were covered by CCTV cameras, and as it happens, the system had been recently improved, and once the police got access to the CCTV, they recovered a whole series of images of events occurring at the door of the flat between the Sunday evening when Nicky returned home and the Tuesday evening when members of her family finally let themselves in.
After accessing the CCTV footage, police spend hours trawling through the images.
When the police reviewed the CCTV footage, they saw a person entering the flats. That person was wearing a high-vis jacket.
The CCTV shows a figure in a ginger curly wig, large frame glasses, with a King Charles I beard and a high-vis jacket lumbering along the corridor.
The person is seen entering the flats just before 8:30 a.m. on Monday the 23rd of May and leaving just before noon, corresponding with the pathologist's time of death.
That person immediately becomes a person of interest because of the time they entered and left the flats. But also the CCTV showed that that person went to Nicky's door.
Who is the person on CCTV wearing a high-vis? Could it be a workman or a boyfriend?
When you've got the CCTV, you don't know who that is. However, you look into the victim and their background, and if you find out how a victim lived, you may find out how they died.
She didn't have a boyfriend, she was waiting for that one special person.
With police still at a loss, they turn to those close to Nicky.
The police called me up and asked me to go into the station to help them with something. But after I got off the phone to them, I was like, a bit like, well, I was the last person to see Nicky. Like, all these thoughts were, you don't even think you're going to think like that, but all these thoughts were running through my mind. I thought, I was the last person to see her, I was the last person to talk to her. What if they think it was me?
Me and Jodie had been called up on the Thursday or Friday by the police at the headquarters in Welling, and they said, oh, would you and Jodie, we want just you and Jodie to come and view some pictures for us. And we were like, oh, okay. And we were like, well, we don't really know anyone around here. We only know our family, so I don't know what we're going to find. Like, we just didn't know what we was going to expect.
So me and obviously Leanne drove there, and we got there and they separated us both. And they basically took Leanne into a room And then I took me into a room, and I didn't quite know what I was here to do. And they just like, we need to show you some CCTV images. Just say what you think, if you know the person, say.
And we kind of sat in this room and had a camera on us. I filmed the whole thing of me watching video footage of someone in a high-vis.
I honestly felt like passing out when I see it, like within 3 seconds of watching the clip. I actually had to stop halfway through watching it. I was in such shock. I was crying, screaming. I couldn't believe it.
And I was like, I don't even think that's a man. I think that's a female dressing up as a man. I knew straight away that Jodie was going to identify her.
I just knew that it was Yvonne.
The murder investigation into the death of Nikki Collingbourne has thrown up a suspect. A man seen entering Nikki's flat at the time of her death. But when CCTV is examined closely, family members recognise the person. And it's not a man.
When I see that first image of her dressed up the way she was, it just all hit me. Just knew that it was Yvonne.
But who is Yvonne?
So Nikki and Yvonne were sisters. There's a big age gap between about 27 years.
I first met Yvonne when I was dating her brother Paul, who obviously I later married, and we became friends. We used to go to the pub. Yvonne went to live in America, and basically I didn't have anything to do with Yvonne for years. She was estranged from the family.
Having moved to the US in the early 1990s, and due to their age gap, Yvonne and Nikki had not grown up together. But keen to get to know her half-sister, Nikki moved to America.
I did meet her when I went to America a couple of times. I kind of had my reservations about her, and she's quite in your face when she talks. She makes everything about her. She's quite manipulative.
She was quite boisterous. She would certainly punch you if she wouldn't think twice about it.
Despite the family's reservations, in 2015, when Yvonne came to visit family in the UK from the US, Nikki repaid the favour, letting her sister move in with her.
Everyone was just shocked to see her back in the UK, but at first we were happy to see her because she's part of the family.
The pair living together came as a surprise to family, since Nikki had shared something with them on her return to the UK.
Yvonne and Nikki's relationship was very strained when she came back because they'd had a big fallout before Nikki came back. And then obviously Yvonne followed about, I think it was a year later, but Nikki forgave her and they made it up, and that's how she ended up living with Nikki.
With Yvonne Kaler having been identified as the person in the CCTV, and with her being deemed the last person to see Nikki, and therefore a suspect, police need to ascertain what could have gone wrong in their relationship.
I have no doubt in my mind that Yvonne was jealous of Nikki and their relationship that she had over the years with their dad.
Yvonne was very jealous of the relationship that Nikki had with their dad because she obviously lived in America and Nikki lived in England and she grew up with her dad, and I suppose, you know, she was in with all of us lot, and Yvonne didn't have that relationship with us. We only had that over the internet.
Because obviously Nikki felt obliged to have Yvonne there because they were sisters, and Nikki was very much a family person. Yvonne definitely manipulated her and used the fact that they were sisters.
Nikki and Yvonne Kaler's relationship was anything other than tranquil. It was difficult and tempestuous.
But could this strained relationship between the half-sisters have led to Nikki's death? In order to piece the puzzle together, police need to ask some questions. So make a decision.
Yvonne Kaler was arrested on the 25th of May, 2016. Once we got the suspect in custody, and we believe that is the killer, the clock is ticking. So we've got to do everything we can to get enough evidence for the CPS to authorise a charge. Because certainly in this case, if Yvonne Kaler had been bailed, she was a risk to other people out there.
Because obviously they had Yvonne, they'd arrested her for Nicky's murder, but they had no evidence to hold her. They had this CCTV image, and DNA takes time to come back, so they couldn't actually hold her.
With Yvonne in custody, police trawl her mobile phone and laptop and discover she had been searching for flights.
The police discovered she was planning to drive to Spain and then fly out to the United States to meet her husband.
She was planning to flee the jurisdiction and fly back to America. Those arrangements had, as it were, begun in the immediate aftermath of Nicky Collingbourne's death.
She was a flight risk. We know she was planning to go back to the USA.
Her mobile phone revealed she'd even sent messages after news of Nicky's murder broke.
Yvonne Kaler was pretending to be as concerned and upset as every other member of Nicky's family. She sent a message to her husband in the United States saying, "Pray for Nicky, as I will."
While piecing together Yvonne's movements in the days leading up to Nicky's murder, further revelations come to light.
She had visited the costume shop where she acquired the wig and the disguise and the false beard the preceding week. So there'd been clearly an element of planning about all of this.
We believe she's planned this murder meticulously, so she's an extreme danger to the public out there.
Police build their evidence against Yvonne Kaler, but at this stage it's purely circumstantial. So the focus turns to questioning Yvonne while in custody.
Yvonne, do you recognise the person in that CCTV?
Look, bow-legged, fat, bow-legged to me.
Even though it could be clear that the person on the CCTV is Yvonne, Yvonne is denying that that is her, and that is not enough on its own to convict somebody of murder.
It was almost like it was a joke. Like she had padded herself up with some sort of padding, and she had a high vis on, a moustache, it looked like she'd bought in a joke shop, a wig and a goatee. And it was the most surreal. I can't to this day even look at it, like, I literally can't believe the way she dressed up and how she thought she was going to get away with that, because you can clearly see that that is her.
When I heard that Yvonne had dressed up to get into the flat, I was just gobsmacked. Never have even thought of anything like that.
Well, I couldn't tell if it was a fake beard.
Do you own a fake beard?
No, I don't own a fake beard.
Do you own a fake wig?
No, I don't own a fake wig.
By denying her presence on the CCTV, Yvonne was trying to achieve the smoke and mirrors that she'd of her plan. She wanted the police to believe that this was a man, and in fact, in a police interview, she tells the police officer that she thought it was a man who was bow-legged. Again, this was just part of her callous plan.
I'm fat, but I'm not bow-legged. I look like a man to me. I couldn't see his face.
What do you think looked like a man?
Just what they're wearing looked like a dude.
Then there is a breakthrough in the case. Results have come back from the forensic lab, which had been analysing the blood found on the broken chicken pot.
The breaking of the casserole pot at the moment that it was used to strike her had quite clearly cut the hands of the person who was holding it at the time, because on some of those ceramic pieces were found blood, the DNA of which did not match Nicky Collingbourne, but which did match that of Yvonne Kaler.
I knew in my mind, Yvonne has murdered Nicky. I just knew.
Yvonne Kaler was quickly charged with murder.
Well, of course
Why
they
would
knew.
you think that's me?
Because to me, it looks like the person's wearing a wig and a beard.
Well, I don't know about a wig, but they look like they had a beard.
We suspect that person
Is
has
me.
murdered your sister.
Well, it ain't me, because I ain't gonna be able to push on that door like that.
Yeah, you said we believe it's you. You said it's not you.
I know, you can't believe you think it's me.
Having been charged with the murder of Nikki Collingbourne, Yvonne Kaler maintains her innocence, but is remanded in custody until a trial date is set. Nikki's body is released, so she can finally be laid to rest.
Nikki was loved by so many people. At a funeral, there were so many people there that obviously I knew, and so many people had travelled from all over to come to her funeral. They'd all bought pictures of her, like at the nursery with the kids, and they all put it on a big board, and it was lovely.
But the funeral brings more devastating news for the family.
Nikki's mum, Rena, it destroyed her. She died, they did it like a day before the funeral. She didn't even get to bury her daughter.
With overwhelming evidence stacking against her, Yvonne Kaler has been charged with the murder of Nikki Collingbourne. Having pleaded not guilty, Kaler's trial begins at Luton Crown Court.
The main issue in the case was the identity of the person who had been captured on the CCTV forcing their way in. Because Yvonne Kaler's defence to the charge of murder was a perfectly simple one. It wasn't me and I was elsewhere at the time.
As the case opens, Nikki's family take to the stand.
I think I was one of the first people to give evidence. So I couldn't actually go and sit in the gallery until I'd given my evidence. I just remember when I did go in, that obviously the very first person I did see was Yvonne. She was just smirking, trying to make me feel uncomfortable.
And they reveal a major fallout between Nikki and her half-sister Yvonne when the latter came to the UK to visit family for a few months.
Yvonne had been at Nikki's for a few months. They'd had a few bad days, a couple of little rows, and either Yvonne or Nikki would end up in my mum's house, which is where we resided at the time. And, we could kind of see the tension, getting a bit more.
So I think they lived together for a very short length of time, like 5 months. But in that 5 months, a lot happened. Yvonne was literally trying to manipulate Nikki into doing everything for her. It was like she was using Nikki, basically. She was just using her.
So when Nikki told us that she was going to evict Yvonne, we were ecstatic really, because Nikki had been in a bit of a state for a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit longer.
Tension arose between them whilst they were living in the flat, and Nikki Collingbourne asked her to leave. On the day of her departure, there was unpleasantness between them, and Yvonne Kaler made a complaint to the police that Nikki Collingbourne had assaulted her. And the police came to the flat and they arrested Nikki Collingbourne, and she was taken to a local police station. Having interviewed her, it wasn't long before I think they realised that there wasn't any substance to the complaint, and she was released from custody, allowed to go home, and in fact nothing further was ever done in respect of that complaint.
But whilst Nikki was busy explaining herself to local police, it seems Yvonne was taking her revenge for being evicted.
While Nikki was being questioned, Yvonne paid a locksmith to break in, basically. She proved that she'd lived there because obviously she had paperwork to say that that was her address, but obviously she wasn't on the tenancy. And so the locksmith, he had no idea, because she was very manipulative. She just pulls the wool out over everyone's eyes.
Whilst Nikki was in custody with the police, Yvonne stole loads of stuff.
Once inside Nikki's flat, it seemed Yvonne stole some of her half-sister's belongings, something Nikki discovered when she arrived home.
Well, she immediately reported what had taken place to the police, that her sister had let herself in to what was Nikki's home without permission. And Yvonne Kaler was arrested as a result of that complaint.
But Yvonne seemed determined to wheedle her way out of trouble.
Yvonne Kaler was now in big trouble. She was facing a burglary charge and a trial at a Crown Court. She approached Nikki's ill, elderly mother in an attempt to persuade her to say that the property that she'd taken belonged to her.
She was subsequently charged with offences of burglary and doing acts tending and intended to pervert the course of justice. And those proceedings, that case was due to be tried at the Crown Court at Cambridge.
While awaiting her day in court for burglary, Yvonne was released on bail on the condition she didn't contact Nikki.
She breached those conditions. She would phone her up, try and make contact with her, and did so in such a way as to cause considerable alarm to Nikki.
Nikki was certainly living in fear of Yvonne due to the burglary and perverting the course of justice.
I think she was just hoping that Yvonne would get on a plane and go back to America and just leave her in peace, because wherever she went, she was always looking over her shoulder. And yeah, it wasn't very nice for her to see her like that. She'd gone completely within herself. She's not bubbly anymore.
Yvonne's trial for burglary and perverting the course of justice was listed for May 23rd. Her half-sister Nikki was due to give evidence against her, something which police believe made Yvonne carry out her deadly plan.
Yvonne Kaler is a very controlling and manipulative person. She likes to be in control. However, once she's charged with burglary and perverting the course of justice, the court process is out of her control. So to try and wrestle that control back, she's been very, very callous in planning and executing the murder of her stepsister.
The court hears how on the day she was due to stand trial for burglary, Yvonne donned her disguise and entered the flat where Nikki lived, approaching her door.
Then this shocking scene of the door being opened and what we surmised from the way that she was dressed and the towel and the half-full bath is that Nikki had been in the bathroom with a towel wrapped round her with just her underwear on. She was preparing to have a morning bath. She heard the doorbell go. She opened the door and as she recognised it was her sister, she would have been really frightened and shocked at the realisation of seeing that although it was her sister was disguised in this bizarre way, and I think she would immediately have known that she was in really serious danger. And there was a struggle at the door. And as you watched it, there were that awful couple of seconds where it looked as though she was just about to get the door shut before finally it was forced open and Yvonne Kaler went in and then the door shut behind her. And then 2 hours of nothing.
Once inside the flat, the prosecution claims Yvonne and Nikki argued in the kitchen, and as Nikki turned to walk away, Yvonne attacked her.
The chicken dish would have been picked up by two hands and used with considerable force, and Nikki would have been walking away from that. Certainly was enough to render her unconscious.
Then Yvonne panicked and tried to stage the scene.
There's been an attempt made to make this look like a suicide. So there was injuries to Nikki's wrists to make it look like she'd self-harmed. There was also a big tidy up of the flat and including the staging of placing a dustpan brush in Nicky's left hand.
Having tried to make it look as though Nicky had cut herself on the broken pot and bled to death while trying to clear it up, Yvonne is once again caught on CCTV leaving the flat.
She was carrying some plastic bags that she hadn't had with her when she arrived, so she clearly had some property in the bags. One of the things which we consider she did when she left and which was in the bag were some of the remnants from the casserole pot that had been used. Because one of the things the police did was they put it all back together again. It was like a 3D jigsaw. But what it demonstrated once they'd done it was that there were a number of the pieces missing. We surmised that she realised that there was her blood on the broken pieces, and she had taken those which she could find with bloodstains on them in the plastic carrier bag. But unfortunately for her, unfortunately for us, she left a couple behind.
When Yvonne Kaler was shown the CCTV footage, her reaction was one of denial.
Yvonne, do you recognise the person in that CCTV?
No, look, bow-legged, fat, bow-legged to me. I'm fat, but I'm not bow-legged. Look like a man to me. I couldn't see his face.
As the trial progresses, Yvonne continues to deny her involvement. Then the prosecution calls a new witness.
Actually, the worst moment thinking about it through the trial was when they brought prisoner to give evidence against Yvonne.
We found out that there was a prisoner that Yvonne had spent some time with while she was on remand. She was going to be released quite soon.
She decided to draw a map of my flat and try and bribe a prisoner that was being released to set fire to my flat, knowing that my daughter was living here at the time with my 2 grandchildren.
She had this idea that if she gave her some of her DNA, I think it was blood, on a cotton bud or something, that she could leave the evidence there and set fire to it and say, well, someone's trying to frame me, because how would my blood be at a scene when I'm in prison? So someone's obviously framed me for the murder of Nicky.
But Yvonne's bizarre plan to try to suggest she had been set up for the murder didn't sway the jury. With all the facts presented to them, including the CCTV footage and the DNA evidence, the jury retires to consider its verdict.
So at one point in the trial, I honestly thought it was going to go the other way. It was like almost like her defence was like making it kind of out like she couldn't have possibly done this, and like honestly, we honestly thought at one point maybe she's going to get away with this. Honestly, it's a really scary feeling. Even though we knew all the evidence was there, it's convincing that jury that she did that.
On December the 19th, 2016, Yvonne Kaler is found guilty of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years.
Yvonne Kaler could have accepted the burglary charges or gone to trial on the burglary charges and let the jury decide. But she decided not to. She hatched a plan, cold, calculated, and she killed Nicky Collingbourne rather than face a trial for burglary.
When the guilty verdict was read out, I think there was the biggest sigh of relief to know that she was going to be locked up and that we would just never have to have anything to do with her ever again, and that we could then tell our children that this bad person is now in prison and she can't touch any of us anymore.
After Nicky passed away, people would like come up to me and say how sorry they were, and they'd always have a memory of her helping them in some way. Like, she would literally go out of her way to help people. She loved to make people happy, and that's what Nicky lived for, because seeing other people happy made her happy. Like, I can't explain. She was just such a gentle soul.